Now I'd like to introduce two keynote speakers and have a time for Clip and Helena's keynote speeches, one after another. This will be about 10 to 15 minutes per person. And next speaker is Helena Norberg-Hodge, the founder and director at Local Futures, is the author of the internationally best-selling book, Ancient Futures, published in 1991, about tradition and changes in the Himalayan region of Ladakh. She is also the author of Local is Our Future in 2019, in which she advocates for localized alternatives to the global economy, particularly involving the creation of robust local food systems and democratic structures. An outspoken critic of economic globalization, she co-founded the International Forum on Globalization in 1994. She is a leading proponent of localization as an antidote to the problems arising from globalization and founded the International Alliance for Localization in 2015. And her institution, Local Futures, formerly is the International Society for Ecology and Culture, is a non-profit organization which, with offices in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. Our mission, its mission is to protect and revitalize cultural and biological diversity by strengthening local communities and economies worldwide. Its emphasis is on education for action, moving beyond single issues to look at the more fundamental influences that shape our lives.
So, as many of you know, I'm coming from the experience of living in ancient indigenous culture of Ladakh, and after that having experience with numerous traditional rural cultures around the world. So actually, I want to start by saying a big thank you to Gunnar Jung, who has helped to put this event on in collaboration with World Localization Day. And World Localization Day, we launched from Local Futures last year to make visible the literally hundreds of millions of people around the world who are trying to protect their local economies or trying to rebuild them with a particular focus on food. It turns out that food is the only thing humans produce that every single person needs every day of their life. So it is tragic to see that our governments are still pursuing policies that separate us further and further from the source of our food. It's led to a type of madness where countries import and export the same product. US exports 1.4 billion tons of beef and turns around and imports 1.4 billion tons of beef in a year. When we first identified this, it was at 1 billion tons. That was about 10 years ago. England exports about as much milk and butter as it imports, and every day food is being flown across the world to be processed. I first noticed this in Sweden in the 1970s, that businesses were being encouraged to use labor where it was cheapest. So at that time, in the mid-70s, the Swedish potatoes were shipped by road to Italy to be washed, put in plastic bags, and sent back again. That was already mad enough. But now in the intervening years, with governments blindly supporting more and more globalized trade, more and more globalized financial trading, we are in a very, very serious crisis situation. So now food is routinely flown across the world. From the US to China, fish is being flown to be deboned. Fish is flown from the US to Japan just to be weighed and flown back again. Fish flown from Norway to be deboned and filleted in China. Here in Australia, nuts are flown to China to be cracked open, sent back again. These are just a few cases that we know about. We know about dozens more. I hope people would be interested in looking at our insane trade fact sheet. Now, for us, this is completely connected to the madness of GDP. And I'm so grateful for Clifford for continuing to try to raise awareness about the madness of that measurement, which, as we all know, is actually a measure of breakdown. It is not a measure of even material prosperity. What we're seeing now is that countries are actually getting poorer vis-a-vis the global trading corporations. We have a monopolistic system now, interlinked giants in media, in the pharmaceutical industry, very dangerously also in the scientific and academic community. We are being essentially having our research and our ideas shaped by big money, not by the needs of society, the needs of our environment, which is so clearly ailing, just like people are. So we desperately need to step back and look at the big picture. And we need to see that looking at that big picture is not enough. We now have a real struggle on our hands to get this out. We need people to know that there have been economists questioning GDP for decades, longer than that there have been thoughtful economists like Clifford and others who have been trying to come up with different indicators. But we really need to have civic society on our side to be lobbying and essentially insisting that our governments represent us. That's what they're meant to do. But unfortunately, the blind addiction to increasing global trade, we see as the main activity, the main reason why this mess is continuing to escalate. And of course, it is coupled with a measurement of success, which tells us only that things are breaking down more and more. So it is, I think, very important to also highlight that most people who still think that GDP is a meaningful measure, or who think that more global trade is a good thing, most people do not look at this bigger picture. They don't have access to it. So from our point of view, the biggest problem in the world today is blindness. It's not greed. It's not selfish greed or ill will. Many people at the grassroots who are experiencing so much suffering, so much job insecurity, an epidemic of depression and anxiety among young people, epidemic, and worse than anxiety and depression, mental illness, addiction. These serious consequences lead people at the grassroots to often believe that at the top, people are consciously destroying us. So we're in a divided world now where more and more people at the grassroots are more and more angry at government. I'm pleading for kindness and wisdom. Anger is inappropriate. If we want to be angry, we should point our finger at the founding fathers of this system who were global traders, and they were trading in slaves, and they had benefited from enclosures, driving people off the land so that they no longer had access to the real economy. They became dependent on a top-down system shaped and determined by others. I do believe that going back to the roots, to really understand that this global economic system has a 500-year trajectory, can help to clarify things. That doesn't mean that we can or want to go back to the way things were then, but it gives us a navigating chart. It shows us very clearly we do not want to continue to support global business at the expense of local and national business. We do not want to follow a formula that believes that we have efficiencies of scale when we actually have monopolistic control. Perhaps the most important, well, hard to know what is the most important, but one of the important facts in this big picture analysis is that when it comes to primary production, what's happening on our farms, forests, fisheries, they are all demonstrating clearly that the efficiency of scale is the smaller the better. We need to make a rapid shift to support more eyes and hands per acre. Reduce technology to be in the service of those eyes and hands. We cannot go along with a digitalization which is supporting mega technological systems to remove more and more people from the land, to replace them with robots, and to put us into AI-run cities where we are now being promised that we're going to have a local life. A local life will only be possible if we sustain life. This path into AI-driven cities, replacing people with robots, is a deadly path. It is one which cannot and is not able to sustain the rich biodiversity and the cultural diversity, which was a reflection of people responding to the needs of life. It was a reflection of connection to biodiversity. So the way forward has to be a turn towards more localized, adapted economic systems. And I hope that we can find indicators that can help us demonstrate this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.